This is the April 13th, 2020 CCSD59 Board of Education meeting. We are running this meeting in Zoom, and I will hand it over to President Krinsky to begin the meeting.
All right. Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Is it 7 now? Yes, it's 7:01 p.m. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Krinsky,
Present.
Garlowitz,
Present.
Lang,
Present.
Mancia,
Present.
Petrielli present, Reed,
Present.
and Schumacher. Schumacher? Mardell?
Okay, you have to unmute, Mardell.
Present.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, all here.
Okay, well, we'll dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance since many of us don't have a flag in front of them. And now let's go to 4.0, presentations, remote learning, and D59 with a video.
Janice, do you want to read this piece first, since we're
Sure.
streaming and not everyone can see my screen?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So there's the instructions on submitting a public comment, and I will check again right before we get to that item. I've received 2 so far. This evening, we are holding our CCSD59 Board of Education meeting virtually. This meeting is being conducted in accordance with the governor's executive order, which allows for school districts to conduct their Board of Education meetings virtually to help ensure the safety of board members, district employees, and the public, and help fight the spread of COVID-19. And I can't scroll it and see anymore, so thank you. This evening's meeting is being held on the Zoom video conferencing platform, and the audio is being live streamed for the public to access. The audio is also being recorded and will be posted on our district's website in alignment with our Board of Education audio recording posting process already established. We look forward to the time when we can all meet together in person again, but until the governor ends the stay-at-home order and until the time when it is safe once again for us to be meeting together in person, we will be holding our board meetings using the process we are using this evening. So with that, we'll go on to 4.01, remote learning, and D59.
So we're going to move 4.01 actually down to 7.02. The video doesn't work well with this menu, so we'll share that at another time. But Maureen has put together, in conjunction with the instruction department, Katie, and many other folks, a really cool histogram that we'll share and discuss in 7.02 under discussion. So
okay, that sounds great. Thank you. So we're going to move on then to the NSSEO 2020-2021 budget presentation. Dr. Hackett's with us, and
Yeah.
and is Julie here too?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Julie.
Ready, Janice?
Yeah. Could you introduce yourselves, please, for the new
Yes.
board members?
Good evening, everyone. This is Judy Hackett, and I'm the superintendent of NSSEO.
And I'm Julie Gillick. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services for NSSEO.
Thank you.
So we will be brief, and we have Zoomed before, so we're very familiar with this format. We're not crazy about it for all the reasons that you probably aren't, but we really appreciate the opportunity to come before the board. Based on a few things, we decided this time with Dr. Fessler and President Krinsky's input that we would provide you a written document, which you received over the weekend, that gives you some of the background of NSSEO. We're in our 51st year as an organization. So we started as an organization before IDEA became law. And we really have evolved tremendously over the last number of decades. I'd say particularly in the last one, as has most districts, really become much more personalized in our approach and customized in terms of building supports around students. So we tried to incorporate that. I know we have a number of new board members here on District 59. So we wanted to make sure that we gave you some of the background about that. When we come before this board and other boards at this time of year, Julie and I present really a kind of a broader context of our organization and the goals that we work on. And then Julie spends a little more time on the budget. So you'll have an opportunity to take a look at that. And then in a subsequent board meeting, vote on that, on the proposed budget for NSSEO, the directed vote. For tonight, we really would like to emphasize, if you've had an opportunity to look at two documents that aren't included in your packet, the highlights 2019-20, and then the other, which is the 2019-20 continuous improvement plan. Like every good organization, we set very rigorous goals for ourselves every year. And so in your packet is the mid-year report, which we did in February. And those right in front of you are the goals. Unlike districts, we have a continuous improvement plan, and our report card is basically this. We set measures that really are aligned to students with a whole array of disabilities, and look at dashboard indicators that are more relevant for our population of students in terms of meeting their IEP goals, their individual educational goals, as well as the kinds of things like person-centered planning, meaning that the student is really in charge of their learning to the greatest extent possible. They know what their goals are. They can be actively engaged in presenting their goals and their progress accordingly. So you'll see on the right-hand side a lot of the evidence associated. A number of students from District 59 are a part of our Timber Ridge alternative therapeutic program. And I know we've had Janice and Art out there engaged with students over the years. We've had a number of legislators and our state superintendent come to visit Timber Ridge and Minor and Kirk. So you'll see a number of those. We also set student learning objectives in each of our programs. And so you'll see a little bit of those updates as well. Social emotional, every district, and I know that that's a very important focus for your district as well as ours, really spend a lot of time focusing on really that appropriate replacement behavior. This year in particular, we really have spent even more time on that, really advancing our work on that, looking at mental health training, looking at our SEL, really making sure that we have both parent and staff and student activities and training aligned to that. We've spent a substantial amount of time on the legislative focus this year on seclusion and restraint, and testified and participated in stakeholder groups with Senator Gillespie and Representative Carroll on this topic, because a lot of what we know about some of the challenges that students have behaviorally make it difficult for them in the educational setting. So we spend a lot of time on that, and our SEL committee is continuing to work and advance our efforts for all of our students. We also spend a lot of time certainly working with Elizabeth and her team on really building capacity, which is a really important piece of any kind of professional learning. So our coaches really have worked closely with your teams across your district on a number of areas around SEL, around autism, around behavior planning and supports, and use what we call a coaching impact model so we can actually measure the progress that we have on coaching for students, kind of drilling down to how it really has affected the outcomes for students. So those pieces are really important to us as well. We have spent a lot of time on learning environment, on the kinds of ways that we can really work on a number of different platforms. If ever there's a time for being creative, it is now. So we've been online even before this pandemic, really looking at ways to build modules so our ESPs and our staff can continue learning throughout the year. So we know that that is really also an important focus for District 59. So we're working on a lot of that, as well as engaging our parents in those processes as well. And the fourth one is our transition services. Even though your students go up through 8th grade, we provide supports and programming for students through the age of 22. But I would say everything that we do in elementary is preparing students for the next level. And a lot of the kinds of things we do in transition are really important for us to start and cultivate in the elementary and middle school years. So you can see that we spend a lot of time making sure parents and families are engaged in their transition processes. So it's not a point, but rather a process over many, many years. And the last one is our fifth goal is really, I think, at the heart of what we are as an organization, and that's the partnership focus. Collaborative partnerships are really at the core of what we do. And so we are seeing that significantly now as we navigate this really tough challenge, but we are working with our community partners. We are providing food for our students in need, and having a great time working with our bus companies and others to make sure that we can actually deliver the food to their door so that we can get to the people that really need that. We do a lot of fundraising, and Julie really has a great team that works with her on the foundation, and really have done some amazing things to raise funds that support our programs. Certainly something we're particularly proud of is our inclusive playground at Minor, and that too has been really a collaborative effort among our Arlington Heights Park District, Senator Gillespie and Representative Walker, and really Janice really helping serve as a conduit to that relationship. And that is in the process of being completed, although there's not a playground open right now, but at some point we'll have some kind of ribbon cutting. I'm not sure when, but we're very proud of that because it will be open for our community. So the other pieces is certainly a lot of the work that we do with Dr. Fessler. The two of us serve on AESA's board, the national group, as well as I'm on the state superintendent's board, and really believe that you have to be a voice for our students. And we have been very active in navigating a lot of the changes associated with special education, with law, with funding, and the important things that we think will provide ways to enhance our educational programs for our students. Any questions thus far?
Well, I'd just like to say that especially now, can you hear me?
Yep.
That especially now, the collaboration among the superintendents in this area has been very critical in making sure that all our kids are getting services that they need, and the food that they need, and the educational experiences they need. One thing you didn't mention that I thought was really interesting is that NSSEO has significantly fewer students that don't have the ability to connect through the internet to the schools.
Right.
So,
Through the remote, you mean, Janice? Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And we have been creative about that for those that haven't. That's been a part, and Julie can speak to that. We've delivered packets and equipment and communication devices and all sorts of things to make sure that the students that we serve have access. Now, when you think about numbers of students in our programs, at several hundred, you have several thousand. So I think that piece has been important for us to try to connect to every student in whatever way we can. We have a handful that have not really. It is challenging to really navigate that for some of our families, and we are sensitive to that. So we have made calls and connections in whatever ways that we can. We do have a distance learning plan, a remote learning plan that's on our website, as well as its own website, and webinars for our staff, and surveys and supports for both our families as well as our staff, because of so many different roles, and so many of those are challenging to do on a kind of a remote connection. For example, physical therapy and occupational therapy are particularly challenging. So they really do videos, and some there's related service guidance, but some other kinds of things that really require a strong partnerships with our families. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Julie to talk a little bit about our budget planning process.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie, and you should have all also received, after our last board meeting, a copy of your district's NSSEO budget. So I'll talk a little bit about that today too. But to start out, I just kind of want to give you a little bit of background about NSSEO's budget development process. It really is a very comprehensive process. We started in January, which seems really early, but our goal is always to get it out to our member districts so they have the information from our programs to use to build their budgets. So we always get ours done relatively early. Our Finance Advisory Committee consists of all of our member district admin reps and all of our member districts business managers. So Vicky's part of that committee, Elizabeth's part of that committee. We have our NSSEO leadership part of that committee, our unions part of that committee, board members, including Janice is part of that committee. So it's a pretty comprehensive process. We have 3 meetings. The first meeting really looks at staffing and enrollment projections. We have to kind of set on some numbers to build the budget. So we look at those projections for next year. And it's really hard in January to project the number of students for the following school year. And we know that's a moving number, but we still need a snapshot to be able to base our budget on and be able to build our staffing plan. Our second meeting, we look at kind of some beginning budget costs. And between that first meeting and that second meeting, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes where we're looking at costs. And if it's too high, we're making cuts. And there's a lot of back and forth looking at what we can get to that's an acceptable budget to present to our member districts. And then we talk about that draft budget. Well, it's not really a draft yet, but it's our program costs at our second meeting. And then after that meeting, we put together our draft budget for our third board meeting, our third finance meeting that we then present to our board, and then they send it on to our member districts. So that's the point we're at right now. So it is a pretty comprehensive, long process, but we found it really works, and it has a lot of input from a lot of really valuable members of our member districts. So this year, NSSEO's overall budget is showing about a 1.3% increase overall. Our student enrollment has been very stable, and our program tuition rates increased about 3 to 4%. A lot of that is really based on our salary increases. As you probably all know, most of a budget is salary and benefits. According to our collective bargaining agreement, our salary increases this year for staff is about 3.25%. The other big factor that influenced the budget this year is the IMRF rates. They were doing really well with their investments, and then all of a sudden IMRF did not have a very good year. So the rates went up a little more than we had hoped.
Julie, could you explain what IMRF is, please, briefly, obviously?
Sure, that's the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. That is the retirement fund for non-certified employees like teacher aides, maintenance workers, your office staff. They're all part of that Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. NSSEO is a little different because our programs have so many teacher aides because of the population of students we serve, that we have a large number of staff that pay into the IMRF system. So those rates fluctuate every year based on how IMRF calculates it, based on their investments and other things. And unfortunately, they had not as good a year as they have had in the past. And we saw those IMRF rates go up about 3% also. Our program, our services, we offer OT-PT services to our member district, speech, a lot of variety of services that our member districts purchase through the cooperative too, vision services, coaching services. Those rate increases range from about a 0 to a 3.75%. District 59 in particular, if you look at your budget handbook, there's a couple, I don't know if you all have it handy or not, maybe not, but there's a couple of pages that I like to point out. In the beginning, there is page 2, actually, that's a numbered page, and that shows all of a comparison of all of our tuition rates from last year to this year. So you can see the changes. In the middle of that page, it shows our non-member tuition rates too. Right now we range, I think it's about 20 something percent, 27% non-members. That's on another page too. And we charge them significantly more. So in the middle of that page, you can see that Timber Ridge tuition for next year is right around 40,000. But for our non-members with what we call add-ons, it's closer to 61,000. Our member districts pay into things like the use of Sunrise Lake Outdoor Education Center and different things that non-members, because they're not a part of NSSEO, don't pay into. So we make sure we add an extra assessment to them to cover those costs. Our non-member enrollment's pretty steady. It helps our programs, and it also helps offset the costs for our member districts. Another helpful page is the last 3 pages of the budget document. That shows District 59's costs. If you look on, I think it's I have every district in here, so my pages are numbered a little bit differently. But if you look at, I think it's the second to last page, it'd probably be the third, just check it. It's the second to last page. You can see a snapshot of District 59's costs. Go back. Oh, it's the third last page. And next year, you are down about 7 students overall in NSSEO programs, and there's a savings of about $150,000 that you're showing from year to year. That again, that number of enrollment can fluctuate. And we always have this worksheet that member districts can use to update. So as you go into the next year, you might be down 9 kids, or you might be only down 5 kids, and the costs adjust accordingly based on those enrollment numbers. But it still gives you kind of a snapshot of what your anticipated costs are for the FY21 school year. Also part of the budget is our 5-year facility plan. We look long-term at our facility needs so that we don't ever come into a big crisis project that we would have to address. And this is, I think, my 13th year here. We've never had to go to our member districts and ask for an extra assessment or extra money to handle a project, that I should knock on wood, because I don't want that to be the first year that this happens to us. We've also been working really, really hard at acquiring funds and grants for the things that we need, like the playground at Minor School. That's completely funded through grants and donations. It's probably over $500,000 project. Part of that was that State of Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, if I'm saying that right, grant, and some other local grants and some fundraising efforts. The wheelchair accessible bus we bought was a $70,000 bus that was totally funded through donations. So we've established some really nice partnerships and have been able to purchase things that we may not have been able to otherwise afford. The bus was really exciting because while we own some first division vehicles that we can use to transport students in between the school days, we never had anything that was wheelchair accessible. So this is our first purchase. We save a lot of money by using our own staff to drive, who are licensed school bus drivers, and our own vehicles. You know, it's a lot of money to charter a bus to take one student in a wheelchair to a job site. So we've slowly every year built up our vehicles and are working hard to reduce our transportation costs. We've worked with District 59 this year as they assumed the transportation for the students in our programs. So we continue to work at reducing those costs every year. as you look at your budget, I think I covered most of the highlights. As you look through your budgets, if you do have additional questions, I mean, I'm happy to answer questions tonight too, but if there are questions that come up after you spend more time looking at it between now and your next board meeting, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Do you have any questions?
Okay. Just the last part of the document, and thank you for switching to the budget piece. Julie referenced Sunrise Lake, and I know that Art and Janice know it well, and a few others. It's unique for an organization to have their own lake and outdoor facility, but we have had Sunrise since the beginning of NSSEO and really use it as a great opportunity to work with all students. And District 59 is a great partner in Sunrise. So you can see some links under that. Really, we use it for team building for a lot of SEL work with students, a lot with administrative retreats, and there's activities from archery to climbing the wall to lots of different kinds of activities that really have wonderful educational opportunities. So there's a couple links in there, and then we really have the teachers from the district come out as well, and some of them are have really enjoyed learning and growing as professionals themselves, and then we get a lot of feedback and make adjustments accordingly. The very last page of the 2021 focus areas is perfect, and that's what we're working on. We met with all of our districts, so Heather came out with Stacy and Julie and met with Elizabeth and Vicky and went over some of the needs of the district, and we did that with all the other districts as well. And so these are some of the highlighted areas of emphasis: inclusive practices in general education settings, mental health supports and strategies, advancing our social emotional learning across our programs, our services and supports in districts, and really customizing training for teaching assistants for our programs and districts in an online platform as well as in person, parent education, a lot of professional development and on IEP work and multiple measures, cultural competency, coaching, as I mentioned before, and trauma responsive practices, and just a lot of kind of innovative service delivery supports for EL learners and special education students. So we really are proud of what we've accomplished this year. This has been a particularly challenging year on a number of fronts, and certainly we're all in the midst of learning and growing through that. Janice mentioned our superintendent's group is a strong collaborative, really friendship, as well as we lean on each other for professional support. And this board has also been wonderful to support us in our NSSEO work. And again, a thank you to President Krinsky, who is also our NSSEO president, and really facilitates a board that really focuses on student needs. So thank you.
Well, thank you, but that whole board is fabulous. Everybody is really committed to doing what's right by students. So it's a joy to participate. And
that is true. Any questions for either of us? Thank you for letting us be your first Zoom presenters.
Right. And you know what I'd like to propose to the board is that maybe sometime, since there may be more questions and there's certainly a lot more rich information that NSSEO can provide. So if you're interested, we could go over there and take a tour of their facilities, which is really fabulous.
We'd love to
do.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much for participating, and we'll be in touch. You'll see me anyway, but we'll be in touch if there's any other questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know how to get out of here.
Well, there's got to be a few challenges in life. Down at the bottom of the large screen, leave meeting. But we're just going to go on, even if you're there or not. You can certainly free attend the open part of the meeting. Now we're coming up to 5.0, which is our reorganization of the board. The first item is 5.01, determination of length of office. These are standard processes that the board goes through every year when we establish who the officers are going to be for that coming year. And so this is just something that we do, and it's becomes very, ordinary part of doing board business. So if somebody would like to make a motion, typically we don't have a 2-year term. We typically historically have had just a 1-year term in this district. It's just the way it's been done. Some other boards have a 2-year term. So if someone would make the motion, please.
Okay. Be it resolved that on the 13th day of April 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education establishes the length of office for the president, vice president, and secretary to be for a period of 1 year. The next election of officers will be held in 2021. And this is Patty Petrielli.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, that's Randy. Roll
Just real
call.
quick, Janice, this is Ben. Just a reminder, Patty, thank you for doing that. If you could say your name, we have people on the live stream who can't see any of you.
Yeah.
So if you start out your comment with your name, that would be really helpful. Thanks.
No problem.
So that's, Randy seconded it.
Okay, so I've got you. Roll call, Garlowitz? Yay or nay? All right,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Schumacher says aye.
and Krinsky.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Yay, you remember.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, the next item then, again, is a routine part of the reorganization, 5.02. Typically, even though we could establish a stipend for the board secretary, which is pretty nominal, we as a board have not chosen to do that. So would somebody like to make if anybody wants to make a motion, you can, but if we don't make a motion, then it will just die, or if we don't have a second. So typically we just don't make a motion on this one. Does anybody wish to make a motion? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to nomination and election of president. We need to have at least one nomination for a president. We do not need to have two for these offices. And so would someone like to make a recommendation for election nomination for president? And the person does not have to serve if they don't wish.
This is Robert Mancia, and I'd like to nominate Janice for president.
Well, I thank you, Robert. Is anybody else going to be nominated? Do we have a second nomination? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
we need to second this, Janet?
No.
Janet. So no, okay. So Lang,
Aye.
Mancia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
and Janice,
Aye.
and Garlowitz.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'll be happy to do my best to help you all come up to speed. So many of you are here in your first year or less, and it's an awesome group of people, and I am absolutely humbled and delighted to serve you. So please let me know how I can do my job better, what your concerns are, any feedback you'd like to give me. I'm all ears. So thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to 5.04, nomination and election of vice president. do we have a nomination?
Yes, this is Courtney Lang. I'd like to nominate Randy Reed for vice president.
I will
Okay.
second. This is Patty.
Yeah, we don't need a second, but it's okay that you did. So do we have anybody else who you'd like to nominate? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mencia.
Aye.
Point of order. I do believe that I think there's the nomination process, and then the election process actually is a motion made by, seconded by,
Oh,
then you take the vote. So I think for the nomination process, you don't need a second, but when you actually state the motion, you need to include.
oh, you're right. Okay. Do we want to go back to the president then and do it
I believe
over?
that you should.
I think so. We should too. Okay. Do we have a motion to adopt the following resolution?
I put Robert down
Mhm.
and then I'll second.
Okay.
Betty Petrielli, second.
Thank you.
So
Roll call.
now we're good.
Roll call, please.
I got Robert Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
Garlowitz,
Aye.
and Lang.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Thank you. So you see, it's so routine that I don't even remember what the routine is. My apologies on that. Okay, so we have a nomination for vice president. So we need a motion to adopt the resolution that Randy be elected vice president of this Board of Education. Courtney?
Yes, I'll make the motion. So be it resolved that on the 13th day of April 2020, Randy Reed is elected vice president of this Board of Education.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that. This is Robert Mencia.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
I only have the sheet that we just did
Oops, sorry.
for the motion. I mean, so we already voted.
Yeah, but we didn't have a second.
I think what we voted for in the last one was we redid the motion on the president.
Oh, okay, all right.
Right.
Okay, hang on. Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli. Aye. Oh, Reed,
Voting for yourself, yes, aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
Garlowitz,
Aye.
and Lang.
Aye.
Okay, and the motion passes.
Thank you. Listen, Randy, if you can't vote for yourself, why would the rest of us want to vote for you, right? I think
Exactly.
There you go.
so. Congratulations, Randy.
Thank you, I think.
Okay, we need a nomination for election of secretary.
I'll nominate Patty for continuing her secretarial role.
All right, thank you. All right, then I will make a motion to,
Wait, do we have to second?
Well, do we want to ask and see if any other nominations are being made first?
oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead again. This technology is a little disconcerting. Is anybody else would anybody else like to nominate somebody else for secretary? Okay, seeing none, I am going to make a motion to adopt the following resolution that on the 13th day of April 2020, I can't see it. Patty Petrielli is elected secretary of this Board of Education.
I'll second. This is Courtney Lang.
Okay,
Okay, and we'll do a vote now?
yes, roll call, please.
Okay, Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
Garlowitz,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
and Mencia.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Now we have to set the time, date, and location for regular meetings. So I need a motion on item 5.06.
Motion.
Be it resolved that on the 13th day of April 2020, the District 59 Board of Education hereby sets the date, time, and place for its regular meetings in accordance with the listing of meeting dates and times attached to this resolution.
I second the motion. This is Patty Petrielli.
Before we begin the vote, I wanted to, I kind of mentioned it, I emailed Janice about this yesterday. I know we have some meetings that go long. I know our first meeting for Chris and Robert went kind of long last month. And I know there's a couple other months where we do have long meetings. I know we are currently trying to go to one meeting a month. I'm fine with the schedule, but I think we need to consider maybe in a meeting where we have a heavy workload, till we go to 2 meetings a month, maybe not more than like 2 or 3 times a year, just so we can get through this stuff and get to the closed session agenda. Because I know we've kind of cut short some stuff in closed session because of the late of the hour of finishing the regular meeting. So I know it's just something for us to consider.
What do other people think? Mardell?
You're on mute, Mardell.
Okay.
Oh, you're back on mute.
You're back. Yeah, we can't hear you.
Wrong. It's bright now?
There you go.
Okay. I agree with Randy. I don't necessarily believe we need to have 2 meetings every single month, but there are meetings that are just so long that it's very difficult for everybody to concentrate and keep up with what's going on. So in those circumstances, I do believe we should have 2 meetings during the month.
And this is Robert Mancia. I also agree on that. I know my experience here is very limited with just that first meeting that went close to midnight. But if there are important items, we should be discussing those with full attention and energy. And sometimes if it goes a little too late, we may be fatigued. We may not want to speak because we don't want to delay the meeting any further. But I think it's a great idea, Randy.
Any other comments?
Yes, Chris Godlevich here. So I'm a big believer in Parkinson's law. And if as a reminder, work expands to the time allotted. So I'd like to, although open to that consideration for business, if it does require discussion, I would like to see if we can become more efficient and more effective within the time given and run it that way. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments?
Mardell. This is Patty. I agree with maybe splitting it into 2 for those particular months when we need it, when it's really long. However, I haven't seen any really short ones yet, so I don't know how we're going to accomplish that, but I'd like to give it a shot.
This is Mardell again. In the past, we had 1 meeting that was supposed to be for business and 1 meeting that was more for discussion, and we would have the school groups come in at that meeting rather than on our business meeting. So I think these are all things that perhaps we should discuss and think about, because there are different reasons for doing it the old way.
I do think that we can't just wait until we have a busy meeting and decide to split it. I think we have to go in making a decision now as to which meetings we think are going to have such a heavy lift that we plan for that right away. And I think some of those meetings in my conversation with Randy we both hit on the same ones. And those are the ones where we get the strategic plan reports from the administrators. And it becomes a very, very quick conversation on so many important topics, and we don't really have enough time to dig in as much as we'd like. And then sometimes we do it anyway, and then the meetings really expand late. So I would suggest that we take a look at those. And maybe Art, is that something that you would be willing to look at and make some suggestions?
Absolutely. I think, I was thinking that we would, on the governance document, we have the board meeting broader agenda that talks about all the topics. Maybe we could peruse that first and then send some recommendations to the board. But I like Randy's thinking as well, that on those on those 3 months where we do the trimester updates, the 100-day updates, that makes sense that on those months, we could add an extra meeting. But let me look at the other stuff first and see if anything else besides that jumps out.
Okay, thank you. So nobody's really, I agree with Chris, of course, that we need to be effective and efficient. But we also don't want to kill ourselves. And we've had some meetings where it's been awfully hard to feel that we can give certain topics enough attention. So let's give it a try. We can always revert back. You know, it's not like it's rotten stone.
I would just add to that even adding the extra 3, I think we all recognize that those meetings will not shorten the other meetings even within that month. We just, all of our meetings tend to go till 9:30 to 10:30, and that's just, the historic practice. Even 2 or 3 years ago, when we were doing or hosting 2 meetings a month, we were still going, relatively late. But I do agree that we do need some time on some of those important topics to dig a little deeper. So those meetings would provide that opportunity.
Right.
Hey, Janice, this is Ben. Can you see the participant screen?
Yes.
So if you click on the bottom, you can see, so Randy, Mardell, and Patty have their hand raised. I just want to make sure you can see that.
I see. My apologies.
That's okay. That's in order of who has raised their hand, just so you're aware. So if you
Randy
want to
did
call on
first?
them. So yeah,
Okay.
so that's the order at this point. People would like to speak on the topic.
Randy.
Sorry, I had to lower my hand. You guys had kind of mentioned what I was going to bring up. Sorry, I should have lowered my hand.
All right. Well, there you go. Patty. Or Mardell, it just switched. You're talking and you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, so my thing is, are we going to push this off till a later time and not vote on it now?
We will actually approve the final agenda. So I think we can vote on this. I think this just gets at primarily, location and consistent time. And then we will update the calendar, and then we can vote on the revised calendar.
Okay.
And Mardell.
To our superintendent first before making this absolute decision. We can talk about it after he comes with the suggestions, and then we can decide. I think also, Art, when you're thinking about it, if there is a meeting where you expect that there will be many of your SLT team giving lengthy reports, that's a meeting that a month that we should consider 2 meetings, because I remember that went to after midnight, that particular meeting.
I believe those are the trimester reports that, Randy and I had both identified, and Art mentioned too. So I think that will help. And I agree with you, Mardell. We should wait and see what his proposal is. In the meantime, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Roll call, please.
Where am I? Petrielli, aye. Reed?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Krinsky?
Aye.
Garlowitz?
Aye.
Lang?
Aye.
Mencia?
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Okay. Now, the next one is an important function. It doesn't necessarily take very much time, but it's important to have a governing board representative to IASB, which is the Illinois Association of School Boards. And they really do a lot of advocating for us, and we work with them and getting a lot of important information. And so I'd like to see if somebody is willing to take over that meeting time and role. Don't all jump at once.
I have a question, Janice. This is
Yeah.
Robert. Who is the current representative now?
Well, it was Sharon Roberts. It was actually Barbara Samaji, and when Barbara was no longer on the board, Sharon agreed to do it, and then Sharon ended up resigning. So at that point, we didn't have anybody. They do some really important liaison work, and it's a good position to be in, and you also get to know a lot of the other board members throughout North Cook and get to understand what the issues are at a more political level and a higher advocacy level.
Hey, Janice, have you served in that role before?
No, I have not.
I was wondering how many meetings the position required. I know that we have the 3 dinner meetings. There's some responsibility at the state conference, but beyond that, I think it's a reasonable position in terms of time commitment. I think it's a big bang for the buck that a lot of good experiences, expands the network, get to more frequently interact with board members from other school districts and learn about the things that they're doing. So I think there are some benefits to serving in that role, not to mention you have a voice in a process.
Well, I guess I'll take it on for now as hopefully a pro tem role, but I'll do that because I think it's important, and maybe someone would like to be a backup to me when I can't attend, as I was to Sharon. Typically, I do attend all the meetings. Once in a while, there's a conflict. So if anybody wants to be my backup, you can let me know, or you can talk to me more offline about what it entails.
Janice, this is Ben. You have a couple people with their hands raised, just to let you know.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. So Mardell.
I was just going to say, maybe it would be a good idea before somebody takes this job on to find out how many extra meetings it entails besides the regular ones that are IAS board meetings that we all should be attending. How many other meetings are there attached to this job?
Yeah, I think Art's probably right, but I can look into this and get back to you. Does that mean you might be willing to serve in that capacity, Mardell?
We'll have to wait and see what the answer is.
All right, then I guess we'll have to delay that for another meeting, or I can just.
Other hands raised.
Yeah, I know. Robert?
Yeah, I was going to just say, is there the opportunity to table this for the next meeting, or as we all do more research as to what it entails?
Sure. All right, I'll get in touch with them and the North Cook Division and ask for some more information so that I can send it out to you, okay? I'll be glad to do that. I've got a note to do it. Okay, sounds good.
Janice, this is Courtney Lang. Can I ask one more question on this? If in fact we do proceed with you being the rep, I'd potentially serve as your alternate. My only concern, and I'd like to know what we can through the research about this, is that in the past, those North Cook dinner meetings have been Wednesday evenings when I had a conflict. So I'd just be interested to know, in addition to the number of meetings, when we anticipate the scheduling will be.
Okay. And when?
Thanks.
Sure. Okay. All right, now we get to comments and suggestions from the public. I will check again and see if I've received any more since earlier. Let me go to my inbox. No, I only have the 2 that I was asked to include earlier today. The board president will limit the comments to 3 minutes. Neither of these are long enough to reach 3 minutes, so I'm not going to worry about it. We don't need to time it. I will read them and then we will move on in the agenda. The first one that I received was from Mary Vickers, and she says, our district advertises on its website that we are open and transparent. You tell me if this is open and transparent. Number 1, when board members speak and have questions, they are told to talk to Dr. Fessler. I think she means audience. I think she means members of the public, not board members there. When they speak and have questions, they're told to talk to Dr. Fessler. How does the audience get to hear the answers? Instead of everyone talking privately to the superintendent, all of us should be able to hear his answers in public. Put it on the agenda and let everyone hear. That is transparency. Number 2, the board has been mainly silent about matters of academics and finances. You are our representatives, and I want to know how you feel about these issues. Giving your opinions in public meetings is transparency, and in 3 years, I have rarely seen that. Number 3, when the administration makes a presentation, there are good questions that should be asked. I heard a former board member say, they are the experts, and so I rely on them. That should not be an excuse for not asking good questions. If you don't ask questions, you won't get the answers from the administration. Asking questions and getting answers is transparency. Our district faces lots of challenges at this time, both academic and financial. Many of our kids are several grade levels behind, and this pandemic has made things worse. At your meetings, the strategic plan and curriculum should be ready to go. Every decision that is made should be made in terms of what is in the best interests of all kids. Often in times like this, those that were doing well academically will continue to do well. Those who were behind fall further behind. The gap becomes students, particularly among our low income and EL students, will get larger. We are already behind the state average. All kids need to be challenged academically. I want to see much higher test scores in 2021, no excuses. Our district has all kinds of plans to make building repairs beginning in 2020. You issued bonds which will raise our property taxes at a time when most folks are hurting economically. At the same time, you have extended the payment schedule for a profitable company, Nicholas and Associates. You need to make sure that all debts that are owed to us are paid, including the final payment on June 15th from Nicholas and Associates for the old ad building. Lots to do. I hope you're up to the challenge. Okay, thank you, Mary. The next public comment is from Lauren Zeich, and she says, to the teachers, community liaisons, administrators, board members, and others who are working to provide services to our students during this challenging time, a huge heartfelt thank you for the blood, sweat, and tears you are pouring into our communities. We know you have your own families, your own challenges, and your own uncertainties. We know that there have been and will likely continue to be bumps along the way. However, none of that takes anything away from your efforts. Please know that we want to stand with you while we figure this out. Having said that, I want to encourage everyone who is not actively teaching right now to turn their attention to the assessments, interventions, and solutions that will make or break our response to this pandemic next year, or whenever we can safely and responsibly return to school. For years, we have been working on common assessments, on identifying students in need of intervention, on the most efficient and effective ways to provide additional supports for those who need them. We cannot afford to start school next year without these things in place. We need to be working on them right now. When our students go back to school, they will likely have been out of the classroom for at least 6 months. Some of them will have had access to online learning opportunities. Many others will not. The gap between privileged and less privileged students may have doubled. It will certainly have increased. Common assessments will need to be given first thing to assess where the students are at, how much ground they may have lost, and how far they must go to get where they need to be. Unfortunately, the common assessments that were piloted this year were not aligned with the material being taught. 6th graders at homes, for example, were given the new common math assessment before shelter in place, and the scores in one classroom ranged from 0 to a 7 out of a possible 17. Multiple students scored 2s and 5s. When a class cannot even manage to score 50% on a common assessment, there is a problem. It is a problem we can and must fix. Teachers are going to be in desperate need of good common assessments when we return to school. They need them to create appropriate small groups, to develop targeted interventions, and to monitor student progress. I know that everyone is caught up in remote learning right now, and I do not want to belittle these efforts. However, there are many children who are not going to learn right now, no matter how good your e-learning programs are. They may be hungry, they may not have internet, they may have sick family members or parents who are high risk essential workers. There are many reasons you do not you may not be able to reach them, but you will be able to reach them when the schools reopen. We must have the strongest possible plan in place and ready to go when this happens. If we don't, many of your current efforts will have been for naught. Perhaps there is already a team in place that is working on this. If not, please consider creating one ASAP. It will make a huge difference. Thank you for listening. Stay safe and keep your loved ones close. Okay, thank you, Lauren. And we're going to move on, but I think some of this will be addressed in the discussion of remote learning. So stay tuned, all of you, for when we get to that item. Now we're up to 7.0 discussion items. The first one is the discussion of electric service provider.
Hey, Janice, this is Robert Mancia. Before we jump ahead, I just wanted to make a comment here, and I know I raised it to Dr. Fessler as well. If worst case scenario, we're in the same situation in May doing a Zoom meeting, in my opinion, I would like to see if there was some opportunity to actually hear the voices from the public comment from our community. I know right now the option of having them submit and we read aloud is fine. But if this is going to continue to May and possibly to June and beyond, I think it would be great if we were able to hear from the community when they submit comments.
I actually agree with you, Robert. And in fact, what I had read, and Ben will be on top of this, the company was supposed to have already developed some solutions, but they have to be vetted and tested. So at some point, people should be able to hopefully read to us, if only through audio and maybe even through video at that point. So Ben, do you have any ideas about that?
We'll work on some options between now and the next meeting. Yes, absolutely. And I'll let you know what those might be.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any other comments before we go into the next discussion item?
Yeah, Janice, it's Randy. I was thinking the same thing, Robert. I mean, I really hope to see the video too. If we can't get the video thing, can we at least get the link of what they sent to us so we can read it ourselves along with you?
Sure, I could have mailed it. I just sort of read it because that's what they do at meetings.
Yeah, no, but it'd just be nice to have it to read along as well, to read it along as you're reading it too.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll send it out after the meeting to everyone. Okay. All right. Anything else? I don't see any other hands waving. And the minute I look away, someone will raise their hand. So anyway, discussion of electric service provider.
This is Vicki Nissen. Our current contract with our provider expires this May, so May of 20th. So in anticipation of that, on March 25th, we sent out a request to proposal to 13 providers. In April, we received 5 responses from a non-broker, 1 response from a broker, which represented 2 companies, and then 1 unresponsive result. That company did not send any information regarding fixed rate pricing, which was required as part of the RFP. We offered 2 options in regard to the term of the contract. One was for 24 months, and one was for 36 months. And this is just for the costs and fees and discounts associated with the purchase of electricity, not any of the delivery costs. The delivery costs are billed by ComEd, so that's a separate cost that we incur. After getting the results of the RFP, administration is recommending that we accept the quote given by IEP Energy in the amount of 0.4556 for 36 months. This is actually lower than the current price that we're paying for electricity right now by 0.01696. AEP Energy is our current provider, and they have been our provider since 2014. Any questions?
I guess I'm curious as to how much money that might save us.
Well, our obviously we have a lot of buildings, so even though the rates are lower, it still would be a pretty significant amount of money. I'm budgeting right now for electric, given this information. I don't have a total for you, but I will shortly.
Okay, thank you. Robert, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi, Vicky. So just a little more info on the actual pricing. So what is that as far as units, or what are we talking about as far as the 0.04556?
Actually, the summary page, it's kind of on the side there, but that kind of breaks down the pricing for you regarding supply, lines, capacity, all those different components make it up. It's on the last page there.
Okay.
All right, Randy.
So my question, I know you're going to try, will you have the savings for us for the next board update on Friday?
Sure.
Okay. And then, so what percentage of these costs are associated with our total electrical costs, considering the delivery and stuff like that?
I would say ComEd is still 40% of our overall cost. So this is the balance. So the 60%. There's two components.
Okay, and then do we see the delivery costs going up? Because I know ComEd's been adding fees and cost sign to my bill to, because of aging infrastructure.
We haven't received any notification at this point from ComEd that our prices will be increasing. But once we get that, if we get that, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Chris.
Do the solar panels and that whole installation under the capital projects have any impact with these costs? Are those considered?
One of the updates about 3 weeks ago, we indicated that we would not be able to proceed with the solar panel project. That the grant had I think it's the federal grant had used up all of the money in the grant, so we would not be able to get that money, which would make it cost prohibitive to continue with that project.
For this year, for this project.
For this year. So answer to your question, the solar panels would not have any impact on what we're estimating our cost to be for electric for next year.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but hopefully maybe another time we'll have a chance at it. Randy, you still have your hand up. Do you have another comment or question?
Yeah, just I wanted to follow up with on Chris's question. The grant is called the SREC grant, and that had basically been all used up. We did not get our petitions submitted in time, or not. I won't say we didn't submit in time. We got beat out. But they're looking to put additional grant money out there for that, and we're going to keep an eye out for that. So we may still do solar panels, but without that grant for the SRECs, it made it cost prohibitive and did not provide financial incentive to pursue the solar panels at this time.
And just to reinforce what Randy said, it wasn't that we didn't submit it in time. The dollars were already given to other school districts, so there was no additional funds. We can apply for it again next year and get those dollars. And I think we're planning in terms of our roofing projects to prepare for that possibility.
Well, that's good. So we're going to phase them in so we can apply for that. That's great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Let's move on to the discussion of remote learning.
All right, Maureen has put together, in conjunction with a bunch of other people, Ben and some other departments, a pretty cool histogram. And she will walk us through this anytime, Maureen.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to share kind of a really what the past month has looked like in the district in terms of remote learning planning. This is kind of a summary and a timeline. So you can go ahead, Dr. Fesser. Really, this started prior to even the closure being announced, in that our North Cook Intermediate Service Center representatives encouraged us to prepare for the impending closure by preparing an e-learning plan and submitting it and having it approved. which the e-learning plans typically were reserved for schools that wanted to use them in the event of a snow day. In lieu of making the day up, they would implement e-learning. Some of the restrictions were going to be relaxed. So District 59 did that and had an approved plan on March 12th. The school closure was announced on the 13th of March. And so we then prepared on that particular day, made an announcement to our students, sent them home with their devices, and prepared to implement our e-learning plan, including we had an Institute Day scheduled for March 17th that we then shifted to March 16th so our staff could have a day to be trained on e-learning and prepare for that. All of the plans that we've done really have been in collaboration with our District Education Association, working with them. And the e-learning plan was the same, including when at the last moment, the designation changed even over the weekend prior to the 16th. And our District Education Association was committed to providing continuity throughout that period. So the Institute Day on the 16th was not how we had imagined it. Some staff were participating from home. Some staff came into the school to really prepare. Our training was remote and that it was a recorded webinar, but our staff prepared to implement e-learning starting the next day. So then on March 17th, I feel like this is a ever evolving story, a plot twist here. On March 17th, the governor and ISB changed the designation to Active God Days, which really just meant that they do not need to be made up. And they also began a panel, an advisory panel that would be issuing recommendations and guidance to districts. District 59 chose to continue as planned with our e-learning plan so that our continuity would not be interrupted as we waited that guidance. So e-learning began. What you see on the timeline was a Google site that was initially launched primarily for our K-5 teachers who are planning for many subjects each day. So that they could have some time to get started in their plans. They could direct students for the first few days to the remote learning Google site. This was a kind of a launching pad for that e-learning that started on the 17th. We had spring break, and we wanted to make sure that while our teachers were not assigning daily activities, families who really wanted to maintain that routine were able to do that. We had our Google site, of course. We also had a couple campaigns, reading at home, taking travel adventures. And I will say our staff also, in collaboration with the DEA, agreed to, on the Friday before spring break, share some ideas for families who wanted to keep the learning routine going over spring break. The guidance that we were waiting for from ISB came on the 27th of March, a very thorough document, and really, once again, highlighting that primarily we want to make sure our families are safe and ensure their well-being, reinforcing that meals are very important. We want to make sure our students are fed. But in this report too, they also encouraged us to shift to a system of remote learning that really, again, emphasizes the SEL of students and families, but really focuses on critical standards for each grade level. So our teachers were doing a fantastic job with e-learning, but it was more kind of pick and choose what they wanted to have the students work on. This guidance really kind of, in remote learning, asked us to really identify critical standards and focus our remote learning on those standards. It also shifted a little bit of the attendance requirements. So that was a helpful document. And as soon as we received that, we got back to work on shifting to a slightly different system of remote learning. That week after break, we had a number of days of planning for what that would look like, working with DEA, working with teachers, administrators, while our e-learning plan continued. So our students, our staff picked up right after spring break, just the way they left before spring break, while we were putting all those pieces together and thinking about what are those critical standards going to be, how will we introduce them, what kind of platforms and tools do we want to use to bring a little bit more consistency to the remote learning plan. Throughout that process, really kudos to our staff and our building administrators, really helping our staff stay connected. We all adapted to Zoom or Google Meets very quickly as a way to really stay connected. In this type of environment, it's very easy to become isolated, but we really wanted to make sure that not just our whole staff, as you see in this picture, but teams can lean on each other, continue to collaborate and plan together.
Mm-hmm.
Once we had the plan, the remote learning plan in place, one of the provisions of the new guidance from ISB was that districts could use up to 5 remote learning planning days. And that would be, kind of like an institute day for teachers where they're focused on planning and training, and students may not be participating in remote learning. We chose to do that on April 6th. Our remote learning plan was done. The training was ready. Our Ridge Family Center for Learning was resuming that day. So all staff participated in training on the remote learning plan, as well as some of the technology tools and platforms that we were recommending for use in the district. We also, after that remote learning planning day, issued a survey to staff, and we're very pleased with the responses, with the high numbers of staff feeling that that planning day helped them prepare for the next step in remote learning. Sorry, with my screen, I can't tell if I want my glasses on or off. I'm having a hard time. So very high numbers, in the 90% of staff indicating they are prepared. They feel prepared for the next step. So then on April 7th, we launched that, phase 2 of remote learning planning. Our instruction really focused on those critical learning targets with supports and resources provided for teachers, kind of the skeleton for them in terms of organizing those targets and associated resources. We got started on the 7th. Just want to mention too that our support for families really continued throughout this process. The meals alone from the very beginning, been incredible. I'm sure you've all seen the pictures. We also have been kind of streamlining our process for delivery of paper-based options. We do know that a lot of families don't have internet. And our shift to remote learning in terms of focusing on certain targets, we also have aligned the paper-based options to align to the same targets. We know that a piece of paper or a packet is not going to replace teacher instruction, even remote teacher instruction, but we want to try to align those and provide that support for families. Each Wednesday, the meal delivery sites now also have that week's paper-based options, so parents can pick that up. We have some books on order that we'll be delivering in the near future to our families through the meal delivery site as well. Another support upcoming, kind of a sneak preview here of we're going to be adding on to our supports for families through our website, including how do you talk to your children about COVID-19 and some talking points for that. How do you work through Seesaw? Seesaw might be a tool that's new for the family. So some tutorials for families about the technology tools and platforms is really coming soon. As well as a parent survey. I believe at the end of this week, we really will be sending out a survey to parents, try to collect their thoughts on how we're doing in terms of communication, support for families, remote learning, so that we can continue to adjust and improve. Some other next steps would really be the, Put my computer farther back or closer up. Consideration of those remote learning planning days. Do we want to use those other days, or how? Probably once we know the extent of the closure. Our grading process for the end of the year. ISB is recommending that traditional grading systems probably would not be appropriate given the duration of the closure, and that provided some options. We want to take a look at that. We are working also, I should mention, in conjunction with the other sender schools in District 214. We've been meeting once or twice a week, Zoom meetings with my counterparts, and really aligning our approach to all this with each other. And then just the end of the year routines, transitions, impact on summer programming. I should also mention too, that transition to in-person instruction that Lauren mentioned, that is a piece of the ISB guidance as well that we will be adding to our e-learning plan, how we're going to approach the transition back to in-person instruction.
Mhm.
And that is
Good.
walk down memory lane.
Yep. Are there questions for Maureen? Okay, Patty.
Maureen, I have a couple of questions. I know that you just implemented the paper going with the meals. Can we know at the end of this what the percentage of parents is that took advantage of it, like to see how effective it was? Because I know we're hoping everything's going to be back to normal in the fall, but they're also talking about that it could reemerge and we'd have to do this again. So I kind of want to see how effective it is, because I think it's a great idea. I really like it, because I know they can't have a teacher, but if they at least can have some of the work, that maybe that will offset some of their learning. But to have like a percentage, maybe to know if we've reached these parents to get them to take advantage.
Sure. When we deliver the meals, we don't keep note of who each student is that is taking the meals or the packets, but we do keep track of how many go out and how many come back.
Okay.
Last week was the first time on the buses. Prior to that, we were mailing, and that got quite overwhelming. So, we will have a total. We also adjusted a little bit the script for the drivers who are delivering the packets, because last week was the first time, and they said, their message was, do you need a paper packet? And sometimes the students said, I don't know. So we shifted the message a little bit so that, so we will keep track. We did make a little bit of an adjustment already in the numbers we sent out for this week based on how many came back. Okay. So, but I'd be happy to share the totals this week.
Perfect, thank you. And also another one, I know that it's going to be difficult to see how the grading process is going to go, but it's already out there that grades don't count. Parents are saying the grades don't count, so don't stress, don't worry about it. And that's all over social media. So what is the impact of the grading on this going to be?
Well, for grading in terms of the work that students are doing during remote learning, the guidance that we have is that a teacher could give feedback, could grade in some way, give comments on that. It's just that a student standing should not be harmed based on a remote learning assignment. Let's say they didn't finish something or they did poorly on something. The grade or feedback that the teacher gives cannot serve to harm their standing in any way. So throughout the remote learning, we are encouraging teachers to keep anecdotal records, keep notes of progress, provide feedback to students. But then when we think about the end of the quarter or end of the year grade, that will probably be a different scenario.
Okay, that's where I'm going. That's where I was wondering, well, how will they figure out, how will they compute that end of the year, their final grade? Because I mean, we're not the only district that's in this situation. All of us are, and it's unknown territory. Yeah. So I was just wondering how we're going to handle it.
Let me jump in real quick. So the ISB has been clear, as Maureen has said, that whatever grading we do, it cannot hurt the current standing of the student. However, they did give some flexibility in terms of providing incompletes providing opportunities over the summer for students who, let's say, don't have internet access, or students we've not been able to work with or do any type of work. So, and maybe addressing learning loss and some of those other pieces. Those are conversations that the SWAT team, which is a group of superintendents and legislators, they're still working out those details. So we only have kind of initial recommendations for the grading piece, but right now what we do know is that it can't hurt their standing, but we do have some opportunities to help support kids in transitioning and learning losses. But again, with the current closure, I think they're still waiting to be more direct and more specific about how that will play out in the long run.
And Art, can I just throw this one out there? With summer school, if it is, we do get back in by summer, what are our thoughts on summer school? And that's not something you need to answer now. I just wanted in, something for future discussion or something, but what was going to happen with summer school? Because I had a couple teachers ask me, if we go back, what happens to summer school?
Good question. Maureen is going to send out an update this week to parents, and then also share some updates with staff impacted by this. But there are a couple of different options. If indeed this does pass and it is safe and we can provide support services for kids in small groups, we'll absolutely consider that. The other piece of the conversation is virtual summer school. So we will absolutely consider that as well. Randy had submitted a question earlier this week to try to identify how many kids that we're not in contact with. We've been doing that through our building principals and directly through our teachers. So Katie is working with principals this week to try to gather that information so we can have an idea of what kids we're not connecting with. I have heard some anecdotal stories that there are some teachers who have had problems connecting with some of their students. I think it's a real small percentage, but I do think there are some kids out there that we've not been able to support in the way that we would like to. So we want to close that gap. Ben has also said that hotspots are beginning to come in, which is awesome news because I think we were expecting them a little later in the month. So the fact that we can start distributing hotspots and providing internet connection and accessibility to some of our kids and families who don't have it, that's also really encouraging.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we feel like those hotspots might also be helpful and for summer learning if we need to go remote as well.
Mm-hmm. Randy, you're next.
Sorry, this is Randy. I had to unmute myself. So my question is kind of, I read somewhere about Google Meets, and that some teachers are finding that after they're having a lesson with their classroom, that once the teacher, let's say the teacher logs off, the kids are still able to stay on the session, which in most cases, I think that's a great thing because the kids are probably catching up with each other because they miss each other, or they're collaborating on some work. But I'm also worried that, there could be some other issues going on with, i.e. bullying and stuff like that. Is there any way we can address that, or is that
Yeah, we just fixed that. Ben, can you jump in here and talk about the solution that Travis put together for that?
Of course. So the directions that we share with staff, there's two different ways to create a Meet room. So you can create one via going to meet.google.com and you create what's called a named room. If teachers follow that process, then as long as the teacher's the last one out of the room, students cannot re-enter that room later. The second way to do it is if you create a calendar event and you invite someone in Google Calendar, that automatically creates a Google Meet. The problem with that is that those rooms don't have the same controls. So we've been telling staff to use the named convention, because if you use the calendar room, then kids can go back later and enter those rooms. So we were explaining that from the beginning, but we still had some of those links that existed. Some people found that it was easier to share that way, whatever, there was confusion. So we found that kids could go back and enter those rooms. So what Travis actually did is pretty amazing. He created a Google extension, developed a Google extension that we've now installed on all of our students. We pushed out to all our students' devices. So anytime, however a Google Meet room is created, if a teacher is not present, well, basically how it works is if no one's in the room, a student can't join. Well, if the teacher hasn't entered the room, because they're the only ones who can start those rooms, then the kids can't enter. So that problem has been solved now. So students cannot go in and enter a meet room unless the staff member is there and begins and kicks off that meet. Google also updated their convention. A lot of our staff are using Google Classroom. The way that works now, Google added a new feature at the end of last week where staff can toggle on and off a meet room that's associated with a Google Classroom, which provides the same service that makes a Google Meet room ineffective or inactive as long as the teacher decides they want that inactive. So yes, Randy, it's a great question. You are correct. In the beginning, there was a way to do that. We had been talking with Google for a very long time. Google Meet was originally a consumer product that they were scrambling like so many people, like so many things, to make this viable for education, to try to create these control features. And we're now in a good place to use this, which is why we're using Google Meet, just because of the way it integrates with our Google domain for our students anyway.
Great, thanks for the update.
Of course.
Okay, Courtney.
So I think that my questions are somewhat addressed by the by Patty's, but I guess I am interested to know from the perspective of our e-learning that was originally launched and then the switch to remote learning. Do we have a sense of our percentage of students who have been able to log on and like participate via internet access in this type of learning?
You know, I know we calculated that very early on, but we were also trying to support families in gaining access to the internet. So that's why we're kind of doing an update this week. So Katie has sent out to principals. Each week we're doing check-ins with families and trying to reach out, even if it's just, how are you? You know, do you need anything? So the focus of this week's check-in is going to be on internet access specifically, so that we do have a number and a percentage of who is engaging remotely.
I've talked to our building principals about this, that we're having our weekly alt meetings that we started a couple of weeks ago. But it seems that each building is keeping a list of students that they're not in contact with. And many have shared stories that over the course of these last couple of weeks, parents who had not previously had internet connection had received it or had gotten it. There were some issues with parents trying to get access to the internet. So we're, again, trying to support through hotspots in securing that. But as Maureen said, hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have a clear and accurate percentage of those who are not accessing electronically the learning elements.
Thank you. I guess I'm wondering too, and I haven't explored our website recently, but some of these components that you talked about of giving a little bit more instructional information about use of Seesaw, for example, or I'm also thinking about those parents who may not have used their cell phones as a hotspot and may not realize that that's an option. Like, do we have any sort of repository of that type of resources about utilizing the internet, or again, the e-learning platforms and remote learning platforms that we could direct people to or share?
We do have on our COVID-19 section of our webpage, there is one whole section on internet access. And it does link to ISB, and they provided many different options, including you know, if your next door neighbor has Wi-Fi and is willing to share with you what you could do, including the phone hotspots, including Xfinity free hotspots and maps of where those might be located. So I believe that is all linked on the COVID-19 section of the website that it looks like Dr. Fessler is pulling up.
Thank you.
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, hi. How are we tracking? You know, it's as a parent of a kindergartner in the district. It's, you know, I look forward to the emails. I get the emails every day, but it's a lot of work, you know, and I worry about the families and the community out there that may have a lot of other negative things going on with everything that's happening, with it's either loss of jobs, sickness, health, etc. Making sure that they are able to navigate through the remote learning plans easily, making sure that the students are able to understand what they need to do and what the parents need to do as well. But I guess the point I wanted to make was, how are we checking what works and what doesn't? How are we checking in on our staff, on our teachers, to make sure that they're confident and comfortable with what they're rolling out every day and what they're doing on a daily basis?
That's a great question. I think the first piece was that staff survey on the 6th after the remote learning planning day. But we do plan to repeat that and hear from teachers what's working and what's not. And then also the parent survey that is planned for the end of the week. I will just share that the ISB guidance that came out on the 27th did really reduce the amount of required student engagement time per day. Really are recommending, it was an age appropriate recommendation, along with that we will provide optional extension or enrichment activities for families who wish to do more. So really recognizing, I think we did a good job of recognizing that our families are in all different places, our staff are in all different places. So I think our data will really come. This is really, we completed last week 3 days of the new remote learning plan. This is really day 4 today. So I think getting additional feedback from staff in the near future will be important, as well as parents.
I would also add to that, though, that since the beginning of this, our staff have been meeting virtually to talk through and support each other. I know that our building leadership, our building principals have done the same thing, that they've reached out to staff, pulled them together. So they've not only been focusing on academic pieces, but also focusing on the emotional element, not just for the students, but also for the adults. So I know they've been trying to think about what virtual climate and culture looks like in this type of an environment. So they've been, from the beginning, really working together, planning, talking, and supporting each other in this process. And I do agree with Maureen that we've tried to make some changes in terms of the amount of context we're having instructionally with kids, so that we're not overwhelming not just the children, but we understand that especially at the primary grades, that our parents have a significant involvement in supporting their kids as well. So we are trying to be aware of that. In our last iteration of rollout for the remote learning, we put a schedule together that was more specific in terms of what the intended instructional requirements are. We tried to do alternate days and add those types of features to provide more balance with our teachers and our families.
Yeah, and from what I've seen that I've liked is, we'll receive a schedule and it'll be very clear. Do what you can. Do as much as you can. Because sometimes we can't make it through all of it, or a conference call comes up, something happens. But I think that communication is key, not just amongst the teachers, but also I know when I walk on the street and I see another family on the opposite side of the road, it's how are the kids doing, and how's the homeschooling, as they say it, how's that going? And that's the topic of conversation with everyone when I see them on our daily walks when we're able to leave the house. But it's I just hope everyone, I want to make sure that our staff and that our teachers are feeling confident with the work that they're doing, and knowing that they're doing the best they can.
And it's hard to feel confident. This is a new landscape for us, but I think we have tried to really reiterate that message of we are all doing the best we can. And even for teachers, just like homes are in different places, a lot of our teachers have young children. They're trying to do remote learning with their children while also teaching. So I think that message of do the best we can, and we have to be flexible.
Right.
One other thing to add, part of the ISB and that joint coalition guidance was that this is a partnership with our teachers union. So we have been collaborating with the district union leadership team in terms of all of the planning. So whether it be faculty meetings or teacher meetings or things of that nature, we've talked through that with that group, just to make sure that we're addressing any concerns, any needs that they have. So we've tried to have a open communication relationship and work to support our teachers and teacher leaders throughout all of this as well.
It's a good point. I'm touching base with Ann Wing either every day or every other day, just troubleshooting or addressing questions, working through situations.
Good.
And sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
Go ahead.
Oh, the survey that, or I guess my big question is going to be, what about the families that do not speak English at home? Are we able to, is it a survey, will that go out in multiple language?
We do. We typically send all of our communications in English, Spanish, and usually also Polish. But we do know that sending out a survey by email, we are still missing some families. And that's where I feel like our schools are doing a great job of connecting with those families. We haven't heard from them. It's a great role. A lot of our schools are utilizing their ESP staff to help with those check-in phone calls. Just to see if we haven't heard from that family, is it because they didn't get the email? What are the circumstances? Just we kind of are considering those well-being checks.
Yeah.
Okay, Randy's been patiently waiting. You're up.
I already had my, I just kind of want to say I've actually enjoyed reading the principal updates that we've been getting from the different schools. I have enjoyed that. I've enjoyed the videos. Everyone's been doing a tremendous job. I'm really impressed. I know we're not doing it right yet. We're getting there. I mean, we're learning as we go along. We've never done this before. No one's ever done this before. So there's no guidelines to what to do and stuff like that. So I appreciate all the work everybody's doing and stuff like that. Keep it up. And I want to appreciate, Robert, you brought in the parents and stuff like that. I mean, I'm lucky my kids are old enough, they can, do their own learning and stuff like that. And I think the parents really need to be recognized and appreciated for helping their kids and trying to do their job at the same time. A lot of these people have, full-time jobs that they're trying to do at the same time that are important to get done to keep this community and this world, keep us safe. And they're also trying to teach their kids along with the teacher. So, I know the teacher put a lot of effort into this and stuff like that. And I just want to say thank you.
Well, I would agree. And I'm glad that, Robert, I'm glad you brought up that you do what you can on your child's work. That's something we can just repeat for staff. We've also really tried to share with families while we're sharing a schedule in case that structure works for you. If you can't do that work until 7 p.m., that's fine. So we're not talking about strict time commitments. So we'll continue to reinforce those messages with our staff.
Good, thank you. All you people keep raising your hands. I just wanted to say that I had suggested to Art, and he liked the idea that I write a letter of appreciation to our staff on behalf of the board. And I just wanted to check with you and make sure that you're all okay with that before I go ahead and send it. And I'll send you a copy, of course, and you can give me feedback if you wish before it goes out. But I think it's really important to let staff know how much we really do appreciate what they've done for kids. And so many have gone so far above and beyond what is almost humanly possible. And in fact, after hearing from a lot of other school districts, we were out there really early with our e-learning. We did a really great job. And I am so proud of the district and the administrators and everybody. So actually the letter should go out to you administrators as well. So assuming you don't have a problem with that, I'll go ahead and draft something and I'll send it out for you if you want to comment before I send it out.
Absolutely concur, Janice, and thank you for doing that.
Sure. I mean, it's a tough time for everybody, and to know you're appreciated is important. I had a couple more things. I'm really glad that we got those hot spots. I know that Art and your team have been working really, really hard to try to figure out how to support all our kids. I even heard that from Dr. Hackett, who was asking me some questions about the presentation tonight. And she said how much you are all really struggling and working to find solutions for all our children and families. So I'm really glad of that. One final thing, and then I'll go down the hand, people who are holding up their hands again. The one thing that wasn't mentioned in addition to all those meals that are being delivered is an initiative that Katie's people have undertaken to make sure that families that are really food insecure, I mean, they have no source of food otherwise, are getting weekly deliveries of food. And a couple weeks ago when I asked about it, Katie told me that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you were delivering to about 30 families a week. And I just wanted to let you know that the Opportunity Fund is a fund within the foundation that is funneling money to the schools, specifically to the Empowerment Fund that Katie set up to make sure that kids and families are getting enough food to eat beyond the meals that are provided by the district. And Art and his team sent out a note to all the staff in the district who had been asking, what can we do? What can we do? And suggesting to them that they donate to that fund. So I think we'll be able to serve, because of the generosity that our district has always shown. I'm sure we're going to be able to serve a lot more families, because I knew that the numbers were going up. Katie, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Janice. That is correct. We are delivering meal replacements if we can, in addition to the breakfasts and lunches that the district provides for many of our families. Those are families that during the school year, they receive weekend backpacks with food each Friday. And we know there are priority families. There are families that we know need some extra assistance during the school year, and especially now. And so we're delivering about every 10 days. We have a very small group of people that are receiving food donations and monetary donations. And we're really thankful that the Education Foundation is helping us to kind of collect those funds so that we can make sure that we can keep that going for as long as possible. And that's really Ashley Robertson, our SEL director, and the community outreach specialists doing that.
They are amazing. They are so amazing to step in and make sure our families are getting what they need, because there's an awful lot of need out there, as we know. And it's a scary time for everybody, and everybody feels disconnected. So thank you so much, Katie. And, I'm looking forward to hearing more about where we are with those items. Okay, Mardell, you're up. You've got to unmute your.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I wanted to thank all of our staff, because I know firsthand how hard you all are working. And this is something completely different than nobody expected, and nobody could have imagined what this would be like. I also want to thank all of our students, because I know each of you is doing something completely different than you originally thought you would be doing during these 4 months of e-learning and other types of learning at home. And the parents, because I'm sure you are frustrated as can be with how you can help and how your children are doing. However, having said that, I want us to be sure that we look ahead to what happens in the way of not actual grades, because I think it would be a punishment to try to give children an actual grade for what they are doing. But we have to look ahead and determine how much these children learned, or how much these children still need to learn, what the deficits are going to be, because we've got about 4 months that they are not going to be in school. And that's really a loss of education, of true education. I don't know how we're going to do this. I think everything that's been spoken so far this evening is very good. And I like the surveys and so forth, and the way the schools have kept up with their students and all of that. But we have to come up with some way to find out exactly what the voids are going to be in their actual education before we begin next year. I think anything we can do during the summer school that will actually help to teach any or as many of our children as we can, we should do. And also, I heard of another district who has been very proactive on something that I feel strongly about, and that is our 8th graders, because their graduations are coming up, and that is a very, very big thing for the students and their parents. I know another school has already postponed it until the end of July. And I don't know what we want to do or how we're going to do it, but I do think we should try in some way to plan for the 8th grade graduations whenever we can get them in before they go off to high school. So that's another thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I want us to think about it. But I do think we're going to have to do a lot more assessing of what the deficits are that have been created by this particular pandemic educationally.
Good points. Randy?
So, yeah, Mardell, thanks for bringing up the 8th grade thing, because I was thinking the same thing about the graduation. I want to kind of mirror on what Janice said about the Opportunity Fund. The District 59 Education Fund, Education Foundation is looking at setting up a PayPal account too, to make it easier to get funds brought in and stuff like that. Hopefully you should have some more information on that by Friday. As soon as we know, I'm assuming Katie will get that out to everybody. And then kind of another thing that Mardell said was, these kids are, theoretically, if we don't get these kids back in school this year, if we don't get kids in school this year, they've missed about a quarter of their school year. Has there been any thought about testing for 2021 and what's going to happen with that? Are they going to modify the testing? Because I know at the high school level for AP tests, they're modified the AP tests for this year and what the kids are going to be tested on related to, to the curriculum, what they've had to learn and what they've lost in the last quarter of the year.
I have not heard anything about testing for 2021, only just 2020. I don't know if Dr. Fessler or Tom have heard anything different.
I think he's talking about District 214.
I'm not just talking about like generalized, standardized testing in 2021. Most schools, almost the whole country has lost, a quarter of the school year potentially, with 15 or 16 states closing schools for the rest of the year.
Now, there's been no official statements about what will happen in subsequent years. As you know, they've canceled the state testing, all the standardized tests for this year, but there's been really no official statement, only conjecture about, what they may do.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it's that way, but I'm just wondering if we've heard anything about it yet. Thank you.
You know what I like, Art, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. We were already working in our district to identify targets that were non-negotiable, learning targets. And it seems to me that what ISBE is asking districts to do is very much in alignment with the work that we've already been doing. So I'm hoping that for the many kids that we can connect with, and to the extent that we can motivate them, that our teachers are able to motivate them, that they will continue to learn during this period. It won't be the same, of course, but it hopefully won't be a total wash.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for bringing that up, Janice. Maureen and her team are absolutely working with our teachers to identify what we think are the most important targets. Maureen also indicated that she's been meeting with District 214 assistant soups, as well as all the other feeder soups. So they're having conversations as well to talk about what those important targets are. So if we feel like we already had a process in motion, so being able to adjust to those conversations and recommendations has, I think, been pretty smooth for our team.
I think we're also focused too on minimizing instructional loss and really promoting mastery of those critical targets for the grade level.
Good. Well, I have to hand it to you guys. You've been doing a great job, and just, under unbelievable circumstances. So thank you. It's really great. Any other comments? I don't see any other. Oh, I see somebody's hand going up. Mardell. You got to unmute yourself.
Right now or wrong?
No, now you're off.
Off?
Now you're on.
Okay, I just want to be sure. I know that the state isn't doing testing, and I'm not concerned with whatever anybody's individual grades are. I don't think that we can even consider that sort of thing, but I think we really have to find out a way to test or assess or figure out where our children are before we begin the new school year. Because how are we going to know where we are to begin and what our deficits are? We've lost an awful lot of time. And I don't care how good the teachers have been or how good the parents and children have been. This is not like regular school, and we have to accept that.
Right.
somehow or other we have to figure out where we begin next year, because that's going to be a tough time.
If I could respond, this is Tom Ludloff. We do start every year with standard benchmark testing across the board, FMP, FAST, math and reading testing. I do think we've had some small group assessment team discussions about accelerating that process in the fall potentially, or really trying to focus in on what's most important assessment wise so we can get that data early. Now, normally we get that data by mid-September, but knowing how different the environment is, I think that has been part of our discussions already to just figure out what that could look like in the fall.
Thank you.
I guess I have a question, Art, then about some of the things you had mentioned about the leaders in the different school buildings looking at things that work in their schools to try to accelerate the learning of, say, the fundamentals. And is that something that will have gone on, those discussions gone on long enough to actually help address that potential gap for the fall? Or is it too quick?
Well, I think again, ISB has been very clear in their guidance in that
Okay.
we have to partner with our teachers, with our unions, in terms of designing what learning looks like in our district. So they've really focused on enrichment, and then linked learning targets, and I think that's where we're at. They've really been pretty, I think, clear that if you're going to introduce new learning, that make sure that you have a good plan, good agreements with all of your staff. So again, we're looking at those primary targets. I think the challenging question that you guys are asking is, what are we doing with kids who are not connecting to? How do we identify really what those gaps are, when again, even the guidance on grading is that we really initially we couldn't give any grades, we can't take attendance.
Right.
So there are a number of things that are I wouldn't, maybe obstacles is the wrong word, but things that are presenting challenges in terms of trying to get everyone a similar experience. But so our goal really has been to develop those targets. Our teachers are giving grades that are really feedback toward those targets and toward those outcomes. As Tom indicated, when we start the school year, we'll certainly benchmark. But we do hope to, as ISB provides more guidance over the next couple of weeks, we do hope that we can try to figure out how to recognize gaps now, and then how to provide supports for our families, whether it's for mental health or academic support. So that's something that we're still working on, and I don't think we have a clear answer on that, Janice, but it is on our mind, and it's a part of all of our conversations.
My question, I think, was a little bit different. And then Patty, after this, it'll be your turn. I was really thinking about the conversations that we had about things like the rodeo and the other acceleration pieces that happened in the fall. If we might be in a better place with the conversations you've been having with the senior leadership team about maybe accelerating some of that if they're ready when we get back in the fall, because I'm sure there will be gaps.
Yeah, well, I wish you would ask a question like that the first time. It'd have been a lot easier.
Sorry, I liked your answer. You filled out some other information for me.
Your timing is perfect for that. So right now, SLT is working with their departments to work on our plans for the remainder of the school year. We call those our work plans, which are similar to action planning. So that is happening right now. So by the end of next Friday, we will provide something in the weekly update just showing you work plans for the remainder of the school year. So that will include some of the conversations that we had about providing, we call it a win block. So what I need or what every kid needs. So whether it's intervention or acceleration or some type of support, that'll be in those plans. But the other thing that we're doing that I think is really important, and I needed to talk with you in our Wednesday touch base, Janice, is looking at the new strategic plan, because we want to start pulling out priority areas from the new strategic plan and start working on our areas of focus for next year. So for the new board members, that's something that typically in April and May, we would be having those conversations at this time to work on our area of focus for next year. So just to be clear, we're developing work plans to finalize the remainder of this school year and to close out our current strategic plan. And then over the next several weeks, we will be engaging in conversations with the district leadership teams, and then also with the Board of Education to start looking at what we think the priority areas are. So Janice, on Wednesday when we speak, we just need to talk through what that will look like, if that's going to be virtual conversations, which at this point I think it will have to be with the full board, but that's an area that we need to get direction from and feedback and input from the full board for next year.
That sounds good, because it was that partnership last year that we did together that put together the priority focus areas. So I think we're almost about where we need to be. Sure, getting it done sooner would be great, but we're where we are. So thank you for that. All right. Patty, you have your hand up.
I do. Okay, so this one has been on my mind practically from the get-go of this whole pandemic. We already had kids at a deficit, and then this happened. So we have a huge challenge ahead of us, how we're going to get those kids not only where they should be, but also through this time where they've been, hopefully, many of them getting some of the instruction they need. And the curriculum, where is that standing now that there's been kind of like a drop off? And I'm not saying like everybody forgot about it, but I'm just saying we were piloting curriculum. We need to get some of this stuff started to get these kids in a good place. And we're kind of at a standstill. What's going on with that? Because I know that I've talked to teachers that say that they feel like they're at they're at the beginning again, all over again with the curriculum, even for the math, that we felt like we were getting to a pretty good place.
Right.
So
yeah, we're gonna continue to move forward, and we've been planning for that. We have some more remote learning planning days and some other strategies, but we do intend to provide training and then continue on with our work in terms of identifying science and social studies resources. But Maureen, do you want to comment on the specifics?
Yeah, and in terms of the math, especially the elementary math, we had agreed to phase 1 resources. We were all set for training on the 17th of March, and we know that didn't happen. And I'll be honest, for the past few weeks, our energy has been really focused on remote learning. But tomorrow, in fact, I have a meeting with Mary Beth and a few other leaders to kind of be like, okay, how do we move forward now? Maybe it's a virtual committee meetings, but it is very much on our mind that those decisions need to be made prior to the end of this year, so that we can have the training up and running and have a smooth start. So it's at the top of the list right now to go back to those decision-making pieces.
Thanks, Maureen.
All right, I think we should move on because we've got a lot still to cover. We're up to 8.0, the consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion? Mardell, please read each high-level topic.
For the acceptance of the consent agenda, 8.01, approval of minutes, prior meetings, 8.02, disbursements resolution, disbursement listing, 8.03, acceptance of financial reports, 8.04, acceptance of recommendations in the human resources report, 8.05, approval to destroy 18-month-old or older closed session recordings. 8.06, approval to release library grant funds. 8.07, approval of ExxonMobil Education Alliance Program $500 donation to Friendship Junior High School. 8.08, approval of ExxonMobil Education Alliance Program $500 donation to Rupley Elementary School.
Right, as you know, we typically make those separate action items, but in the interest of trying to reduce the number of topics we have to discuss, they were put in the consent agenda. So do we have a second?
I'll second. Patty Petrielli.
Okay, does anybody have anything they want to pull? Seeing none, could we have roll call, please?
Oh, gosh, where am I? Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
Gerlowitz,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
and Petrielli. Aye. And the motion passes.
All right. Now we're up to action items 9.0. These are items that have come before the board for discussion prior to this, except for 9.04, I guess, and 9.05, which come up every year. So would someone like to make a motion on 9.01? I can make a motion. Let me get to it. All right. And whereas Republic Services has provided the required services while demonstrating a high level of performance, whereas Republic Services has proposed a new rate of 1% increase that does not exceed the consumer price index for all urban consumers, annualized rate for December 2019, and has provided the required rationale. Now therefore be it resolved on the 13th day of April 2020, the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District 59 approves the renewal for refuse recycling service with Republic Services on South Bessie Ave in Mount Prospect for the 2020-2021 school year for a monthly rate of $4,221.22, or an annual cost of $50,654.64. That was Janice, in case you couldn't tell. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Patty.
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Schumacher,
Ardell?
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
Fourth
I
time.
could read your lips on that one.
Yeah.
Krinsky,
Aye.
Gerlowitz,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli. Aye. Reed. Randy.
We read your lips. He said aye.
Oh, okay. And the motion passes.
Okay, we cannot hear you, Randy. Okay, the next item on the action item is the approval of the PTAB authorization to intervene on assessment appeals. Would someone make a motion on that one, please?
This is Courtney Lang. I can make a motion. Whereas an owner or manager of a parcel or parcels of real property located within the boundaries of the state of Illinois has the right to file an appeal challenging the assessed value of a parcel or parcels of real property within the state of Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board. And whereas an appeal before the PTAB seeks a reduction in the assessed value of the parcel or parcels, whereas a reduction in the assessed value of a parcel or parcels granted by the PTAB on a property located within the boundaries of the Board of Education of the Community Consolidated School District 59 will lead to the issuance of a real estate tax refund from the board. And whereas a taxing district has the right to intervene in proceedings before the PTAB in order to protect the taxing district's revenue interest in the assessed value of a parcel or parcels, and whereas the time period during which a taxing district may intervene is within 60 days after the taxing district's receipt from the local board of review of notice of the filing of an appeal by an owner or manager of a parcel or parcels of real property. And whereas the board has determined that it is necessary, desirable, advantageous, and in the public interest to defend the board's real property tax base by intervening in PTAB appeals filed on parcels within the boundaries of the board. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of Community Consolidated District 59, Cook County, Illinois, as follows. 1, the board finds that all of the recitals contained above are true, correct, and that the same are hereby incorporated herein by reference. 2, the board hereby authorizes Franchek Radley PC as its legal representative to A, file a request to intervene in appeal proceedings in all 2016 through 2020 assessment year appeals filed at the PTAB for which the board receives notice from the Cook County Board of Review, and B, represent the board's interest in these proceedings. 3, all motions and resolutions or parts thereof in conflict with the provisions of this resolution are, to the extent of such conflict, hereby repealed. 4, if any section, paragraph, clause, or provision of this resolution shall be held invalid, the invalidity of such section, paragraph, clause, or provision shall not affect any of the other sections, paragraphs, clauses, or provisions of this resolution. 5, this resolution shall be in force and effect upon its adoption.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I second it, Mardell.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments about that one? Okay, roll call, please.
Hang on one sec. Okay. Janice,
Aye.
Garlowitz,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
and Schumacher.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion on 9.03?
That on the 13th day of April 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education established the 2020-21 school year pay bus fee at $379. Mardell.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Randy, I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Garlowitz,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher.
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
and the motion passes.
All right. I like these motions passing.
I know, right?
Yeah, okay. 9.04, proclamation for Volunteer Appreciation Week. There had been a question about whether or not we might want to table that. My only concern would be that if we delayed, it's not clear when, if ever, we'd be able to provide the proclamation, given how things are going at the moment. We're probably not going to be in school for the rest of the year. So that's what I'm thinking anyway.
I know.
Yeah, we recommend that we move forward with both the acknowledgement for volunteer and for staff recognition, and that we will plan something amazing for our volunteers and for our teachers to recognize the awesome efforts that they put in on a regular basis.
And that includes board members, right? Since we're volunteers.
Amen, sister.
Okay, so would someone make a motion on 9.04, please?
I'll make the motion. Whereas the mission of Community Consolidated School District 59 is preparing students to be successful for life. Whereas the future success and well-being of our children largely depends on a quality public education. Whereas volunteers give unselfishly of their time and talents throughout District 59 schools, provide assistance to students and staff. And whereas District 59 school volunteers are advocates for children, partnering with schools, parents, educators, and business leaders in support of the educational process and student success. Now, therefore, it be resolved that on April 20th through the 24th, 2020, is hereby proclaimed Public School Volunteer Appreciation Week with the Community Consolidated School District 59. In recognition of the contributions made by volunteers working throughout our school district during the school year 2019 and 2020 school year, for the benefit of students, staff, and our community.
Thank you. Oh, so do we have a second?
I'll second it, Mardell.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Okay. Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
and Garlowitz.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Yeah, I mean, our volunteers do so much and they're continuing to do things. The Salt Creek PTO has been meeting via Zoom to figure out how they can support students. So, you know, it keeps, the people keep giving. It's just wonderful. Okay, do we have a motion on 9.05?
I'll read that one. This is Robert. Whereas preparing students to be successful for life is the mission of the Community Consolidated School District 59, and whereas the economic future of our community, state, and nation is dependent upon a knowledgeable and informed citizenry, and whereas the week of May 4th through 8th, 2020 has been designated as National Teacher Appreciation Week, whereas members of the Board of Education desire to recognize teachers and all employees of School District 59 for their dedicated contributions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on the 13th day of April 2020, on behalf of the residents, parents, and students, and especially members of the Board of Education, the week of May 4th through 8th, 2020 is hereby proclaimed as Staff Appreciation Week within Community Consolidated School District 59. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the President and Secretary of the Board of Education will sign the proclamation attached hereto, and a certified copy of the proclamation will be sent to each school within the Community Consolidated School District 59.
I'll second.
Do you want to do that electronically, Art? Because I could sign them electronically and Patty could too, and then we wouldn't be having to mail them. You must be muted because your lips are moving, but nothing is coming out.
I believe those are in the packet, the signature packet for tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for the clarification. Good. All right, roll call, please.
Okay, where am I? Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
Garlowitz,
Aye.
and the motion passes.
All right. Now, the moment we've been all waiting for by you know who, and it's your moment of limelight.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this all evening. It's great to see everyone. This is Ross Vittori. We have had 2 FOIA requests submitted and completed appropriately since the last report to the Board of Education.
Thank you, Ross. Very to the point. Okay, 11.0. Are there any committee reports?
No.
Yeah, I got a couple. I'm sorry. It's always me. Always the committee reports.
Okay.
Let me get to that page. Quickly on the finance and facilities, we talked about the solar panels already tonight. The secured entrances, we've also going to delay those secured entrances until next summer. We did put an RFP out there for the asbestos abatement in Claremont to make sure that gets done beforehand anyways. And in the on last week's board update, Vicki gave an update on what the maintenance and the facility people are working on and how they're kind of working on some stuff for getting an early start on some summer jobs and just making sure our schools are ready for when the kids do come back. Safety committee meeting, there's nothing to report. The Education Foundation. District 59 Got Talent, which is on April 18th, has been canceled, as you can imagine. And date has not been scheduled yet for next year. Harper College is in complete, doing the e-learning and stuff too. So they have not given much thought to next year's schedule yet for their auditorium. We have been advised that we'd be given one of the priority spots for choosing dates when they are ready to start accepting reservations. Also want to let you know that the Got to Run was also canceled this year. That's where the kids go out and run a mile or 2 miles with their parents. And there's some school groups get together and do it as a group. So that's been canceled as well. And we've already talked about the Education Foundation. So I'll just end it at that.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee reports?
So just briefly, this is Courtney, and the last time I saw many of you in person was at the Communications Committee, which was the Wednesday after the last board meeting and the week before we had the school closures. And at the time, we were still proceeding with thinking that a forum might be possible on Wednesday, April 15th, which is obviously a moot point now as well as talking about some board coffees in May. I think at this point, our plan is to try to reconsider a forum in the fall. We'll have time to further develop the topic and then to revisit board coffees in the fall.
Right.
Good idea.
Ben, are we still are there any other communications committee meetings scheduled? I just don't remember.
We have them scheduled. Part of the conversation that I think we have to have as a board about all committees is which ones will end up becoming virtual committees and which ones would then be postponed until we can meet again in person. So we can have that discussion. We do have future meetings scheduled, 1 or 2 more for the rest of this year. So we could discuss that and follow up. Absolutely.
Because we also haven't gone through and seen who wants to sign up for what committees. I think we had some preliminary conversation, but I don't think we've had it with our new board members. So we'll need to do that sometime too. I don't know if there's going to be room on like the next agenda. I mean, it's not the most pressing thing right now. I think we could continue where we are.
When we get to board governance, maybe that's one of the documents that you work through in the new board training, because we do have a list of committees on there, and I think there are descriptions with those. So that's something you could introduce to the board members who attend that session. I think
that's a good point. Yeah, we could do that. Okay, because that's the next thing is the board governance training for the new board orientation, which is now scheduled for Monday, this coming Monday at 7 o'clock. And Sharon's going to run that meeting and I'm going to attend. And it's of course for Chris and Robert, and we'll get a chance to get all excited and talk about all the important things that the board will accomplish. And it's kind of nice to talk about the future and positive things in the face of all this waiting in space, you know. So I'm looking forward to that. Anybody else is certainly welcome to listen in. It'll be posted because there'll be 3 board members there. But I don't think we're going to have any live input unless there are some board members that, I mean, some public, it's really not that kind of thing. It's really not for, you know, it's a training that we're delivering. So I guess it doesn't really matter. But if they want to listen, they certainly could. Okay, then we're up to 12.0, reports of the Board of Education. Do we have any additional reports other than what's already been discussed?
I've been trying to raise my hand.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. And so did Randy. Randy beat you to it. Randy, go ahead. You first.
Well, the day after the last board meeting, the Tuesday after the last board meeting, I attended the Character Coalition Counts kind of presentations at Elk Grove Village Hall before the village meeting. It was really cool to see many of our different schools represented and what they had done. Sarah Manafiki was there with her class and all the recycling that they were doing at Bird. I met a senior at Elk Grove High School, Eagle Scout, who had done a Century Garden at one of the schools, and I can't remember what school it was at.
Oh, really?
It was really impressive. Talking to some of the other mentor programs and some of the other groups that what the kids have been doing was pretty impressive. You know, donating stuff to animal shelters or assisting families and stuff like that. It's all pretty impressive. And it wasn't limited. The best part about it wasn't limited to Elk Grove Village. There was a school from Schaumburg, a school from Itasca, and some I think a brownie group or a Girl Scout group from Itasca as well. So it was kind of a community thing. It said it's not an Elk Grove thing, which is pretty impressive.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. What I did miss was I didn't stay around for the presentation at the village meeting because I had to leave. But it was still, there's probably about 20 to 30, about 25 different groups there of kids presenting what they had been doing and stuff like that throughout the year.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you were able to attend that. Mardell, you're up.
I don't have a report per se. However, I do have the ESSA document on my computer as a PDF, and I was wondering if Robert and Chris would like me to send it to them. It's part of your governance training to find out what ESSA is all about, and perhaps if I can get it to you, you can look at it beforehand.
Yeah, that stands for Every Student Succeeds Act. So it's kind of a new push last year or so.
So
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Mardell.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mardell. Anything else under reports of the board? Okay, seeing none, reports of the superintendent's team.
I'm sorry. I think we covered most of what we wanted to say during the update portion connected to the remote learning. I was planning to talk a little bit about our next steps with end of the year work plans, action plans, and then also plans for transitioning to the new strategic plan. I did speak a little bit about that earlier, but I would like to get feedback and arrange some type of a meeting with the full board to discuss the new strategic plan, and then talk about what we want focus for next year to look like, and then begin to develop plans and action plans to support that. So that would be something I'd like you to all think about. Janice and I are going to talk a little bit more about it on Wednesday as well.
And it's actually a good time because as part of your regular performance review, which is what we're working on now, that's part of it, about what kinds of things we'd like to see moving forward. So it's a perfect time because I'm already talking about the current strategic plan versus the new one, and kind of positioning people so that they have some understanding. So they'll be a little more prepared to have that conversation with you.
Thank you. The other piece, Katie or Elizabeth, I don't know if you guys would like to weigh in on some of the challenges and the work that you're doing with the special ed component of this service. I know Judy spoke to some of the things that they're doing at NSSEO, but again, this is an area where we're working hard and trying to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. Did you want to provide any updates connected to that, Katie or Elizabeth?
Sure. This is Katie. I can share that, it has certainly been a challenge. We, going into remote learning, know that regardless of the situation, we have to provide our services to students that have individualized education plans. And so what's a little bit different for our students in special education is that the timelines that ISB has provided, the guidance as to what might be good timeframes for students to do remote learning each day doesn't necessarily apply to our students in special education, because their timelines are outlined on their IEP and those have to stay intact. And so we are trying to make sure that the remote learning that we provide through our LBS, our special ed teachers, social workers, psychologists, speech and language pathologists, OTPTs, is directly related to what's on each student's IEP. And so they're not engaging sometimes in the learning activities that we've provided for the grade level. Sometimes they have very unique activities provided by those case managers or special educators that are directly related to their goal as it pertains to their IEP. So it's just a little bit different because it's, as all special ed, is a very individualized process. And so all of those special educators are designing that instruction and what makes the most sense for that family in their home environment and per the IEP. So right now we are actually touching base with many of our families to check in and say, based on your child's goals and what we know is most important and prioritized in their education, how is this working for you at home, and how can we continue to adapt and be flexible to make sure that it's something that works for your family? So we are, in that process right now and continuing to work through it. But it has been a challenge just because of the time frames. If a student had 40 minutes a day of reading support, we are still trying to provide 40 minutes a day of reading support. It hasn't changed based on what the state has provided because we're still held to federal regulations.
And then Ross, can you talk a little bit about the hiring process and how we're transitioning our focus back to filling vacancies for next year?
Yes, so we do have a number of vacancies to fill. We have 4 administrative, we have 6 dual language, we have a handful of special ed, hard to fill positions. And then of course we have our typical openings based on retirements and resignations. So we are right now working on a safe way to be able to have both applicants and HR staff complete fingerprinting and background checks. That has halted the process for a couple finalists that we would like to move on pretty quickly. The good news there is that pretty much anywhere else you could get a fingerprint has also been closed. So of course we don't want to lose candidates, but we also need to put the safety of our staff first. Our dual language hiring committee was already completing RIVs, digital interviews, and then moving to face-to-face and actually even some classroom demos. Those have now been shifted to digital small group interviews, and those are happening this week. So we have some teachers hopping on and we have some principals hopping on. Of course, Griselda, Andrea, Larry Gannon, they're helping too. So we hope to be filling those positions. And then of course, administratively, I'll give an update in closed session about that process, but we are moving through all 3 of those searches and we're in a little bit of a different stage in each of those.
Thank you, Ross. And then lastly, Vicki, can you provide a quick update with budget timeline and process?
Sure. This is Vicki. We are finalizing our budget entry into Skyward, which is one of the first steps that we do prior to reconciling the budget and looking at where we're at from a first draft of the budget. So we should have that done this week. Then we can begin looking at any tweaking that will need to be done moving forward.
Sounds good.
I believe that concludes the updates. SLT, anything that we've forgotten? All right, thank you.
Thank you, SLT. All right, so now we need to make a motion to go into closed session. And what's going to happen is we're going to conclude this open session and I am going to send, we're going to go on to the next one that Ben sent out for us for the closed session purposes. So we'll do that after we conclude this meeting. So will someone make a motion, please, to go into closed session?
Be it resolved, this is Patty Petrielli. Be it resolved that on the 13th day of April 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education recess in a closed meeting for discussion of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district.
All right, I'll second it. It's Janice. Roll call, please.
Okay. Mancia,
He vanished.
uh-oh.
He must have
Aye.
jumped off before.
There I am.
Petrielli,
You're there?
aye.
Yep, aye.
Reed,
This is Robert.
Aye.
There you go.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Krinsky,
Aye.
Garlowitz,
Aye.
and Lang.
Aye.
And
And
motion passes.
Janet, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, why don't we hop off this and then start the next one and then take a 5-minute break. Okay,
Yes.
thank you, everybody. I'll see you in the next closed session room.
Okey dokey.
Right.